Today I'm going to be telling a bedtime story because Donnie, our audio guy, tells me that my voice projects to the top range of what our audio equipment can actually catch, and it gets a bit tinny and muffled. So I'm going to try my best to not hit those top ranges, which means I need to be softly spoken and tell a bedtime story as we discuss today's topic, which is how and why RPE and percentage-based training or percentage-based programming for the matter is not mutually exclusive, and how more than likely the current programming that you're doing and completing yourself has elements of both, and why these two strategies aren't exactly independent of each other. And really they go hand in hand really well. So let's get into it. Is my hair looking fresh? So chapter one of this bedtime story is the fact that whether you like RPE-based training or not, I can guarantee that throughout the lifespan of your lifting journey, you have used RPE constraints within majority, if not all, of your programs. And this is the first way in which RPE and percentage-based programs actually have a lot of commonalities. Most people start off in some form of a linear percentage-based programming strategy, where week one you might hit a 5x5 at 70%, week two you might hit a 5x5 at 75%, week three you might hit a 5x5 at 80%, and then week four is your deload week where you drop back down and maybe hit a 3x3 back at that 70% of your 1RM. And this is a pretty typical linear-based programming strategy with a 3 up, 1 down model. However, within those training weeks, more often than not, and more likely, potentially towards the end of the block, in that third week where we're hitting a 5x5 at 80%, we know that some of those sets are probably going to get pretty darn close to failure. And you may have in the back of your head whether or not it's an objective sort of rule for yourself or not, in that if you push too close to failure, your following set you may take 5 kilos off the bar. So set one maybe at 100 kilos, set two at 100 kilos, set three at 100 kilos, and you almost max that rep out on that final rep. So in your head, you may just be like, look, I'll knock it down to 95 and I'll do the remaining 2 sets at 95 kilos. And that in and of itself, that decision to drop the weight down, whether you want to call it RPE-based training or whether you want to call it just your subjective feeling that you're too close to failure, that is an RPE constraint within your training and within your percentage-based training and percentage-based programming. So here's the first real sort of look into how our RPE and our personal rate of perceived exertion is actually going to influence the loads, whether or not we're doing completely an RPE-based program or a percentage-based program that we've all come up through when first starting and entering the gym whenever we first started, when Ziz was and still is the king. So chapter two of this bedtime story is discussing top sets. And I know I discussed top sets in the previous video, and I'll make sure Donnie allows that novel to be placed here somewhere. But top sets are another opportunity where we can see how both percentage-based and RPE-based programming strategies really work well together. This second strategy here is the most common way in which we program top sets here at Melbourne Strength Culture. We have an RPE-based top set. You might have a top single at RPE 8 that will project a predicted daily max, and then you would work off your back offs of a percentage of that predicted daily max. So this is really, really common, and I think it's got a lot of utility, and it's another strategy in which you could use both RPE and percentage-based programming within the same strategy for an individual. So up here in the example, the first example that I've written on the board, we have a percentage-based top set with an RPE-based back off. So the inverse of what's going on down here. What this would look like is maybe an 80% of a 1RM from previous competition for a top set of 5, and then you have some form of RPE back off. Typically this would be some sort of a range, maybe RPE 7s to 8s for more sets of 5 or more sets of 10 or something like that. Ultimately these sort of prescriptions would depend on the individual program and the specifics of the context involved. However, what we do have here is some more examples of how both RPE and percentage-based programming really do mesh well together, and they're not mutually exclusive, and in reality they can work really, really well. And to get more out of your clients and yourself, utilizing a combination of the two may actually be best fit for you in your specific context. subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you haven't already, if you could follow us on Instagram too. We're really close to 7,000 followers and it'll be cool to hit that milestone. Chapter 3 of this bedtime story is simply the fact that we all have somewhere utilized AMRAPs within our training. And an AMRAP is exactly what we've described earlier in the first example, where we have a constraint on the exercise as a result of perceived effort. And in an AMRAP's specific context, we're talking about actually failing a rep, and that would be what we would deem an RPE 10. Like we couldn't do anything else other than fail that final rep. We all know that pushing your AMRAPs to complete concentric failure or technical breakdown probably isn't the smartest decision from an injury risk perspective or just a fatigue management perspective. So we don't recommend that you push your AMRAPs all the way to an RPE-based 10. However, if you're using percentage-based prescriptions and then utilizing AMRAPs at the end of those sets or the end of those sessions, you are again using a strategy where we're combining both percentage-based training with the load selection for the AMRAP, and then the AMRAP itself is an RPE-based execution of that percentage load. And if you're not pushing it to failure, you may have, I'm gonna go as hard as I can and leave one rep in the tank, without actually saying you're doing an RPE 9, that's what you're actually doing. So there may actually be multiple examples within your current programming where you're using these RPE-based constraints around your percentage-based lifting and around the execution of your sets without actually calling it an RPE strategy, when in reality that's exactly what it is. And this is one of the main reasons why we here at Strength Culture really like to educate all lifters on RPE-based understandings. And having knowledge and the ability to actually call your RPEs somewhat accurately, yeah, we know not everyone's going to be accurate in all contexts. However, it is a skill. We can get better at selecting RPEs. It actually improves our ability to ensure that we're actually stepping forward and making progress even in a percentage-based program as we've discussed here today. So learning your RPE strategies, regardless of whether or not you like RPE training at the crux of what you're doing or you prefer percentage-based prescribed loads, it doesn't really matter, because ultimately having awareness of yourself and learning what failure is to you, where sets get hard and where sets are too easy to really force an adaptation or start to create some constructive training is really important. And we highly recommend undertaking that strategy and learning some RPE within whatever programming strategy you're currently using. So wrapping this sort of story up here, we have three main areas in which you may actually be utilizing both percentage-based and RPE-based programming strategies within your current or previous programs for yourself or your clients. And really they're not mutually exclusive, and the two strategies from a programming standpoint really do mesh well together, and they provide deeper opportunity for us to get the most out of our training sessions and out of our training blocks. Thank you for making it to this point in the video. We know that not many of you will be left at the very end. The metrics tell us 50% drop off. So if you have made it this far, we do appreciate you. Everybody else, you know what we say, can get stuffed. What was that? Everyone else can get stuff, yeah, stuff them. So thank you for coming this far. If you have made it this far, let us know what your thoughts on the video is. Let us know what the thoughts on the audio were. I really did try to keep my voice a little lower, and hopefully Donnie gives me the all clear with this one. But thank you for following. Thank you for following. Why I've said that twice. F me. Am I in a good spot? But if you have made it this far, just like the video or share it with somebody who may find value in these sort of topics. And if you haven't, I would recommend going back and watching the top set video that we did maybe 2 weeks ago, because there would be some more information in there of how better to prescribe those top set and RPE based strategies together.